Hello and welcome to Blythe Business News. For this edition, I'm joined by Nigel Robinson, Chief Executive of Central Asia Metals, or as it's often known, using its London ticker, CAML. We're celebrating with Nigel the company's 5th year of ownership of the Sasa lead zinc mine in North Macedonia. I mean, in this interview, we're going to be looking back a little bit, but also looking forward. So, Nigel, let's start by saying there you were some years ago. You were running a very, very good operation at the Kunrad copper operation in Kazakhstan. You were returning money to shareholders. But then you took this decision. You became the owners of Sasa 5 years ago. What was it that first attracted you to the Sasa operation?
Well, hi, Tim. And many happy returns to Sasa, I guess it's fair to say. 6th of November 2017, we bought the Sasa mine in North Macedonia. And what attracted us, I guess, at the time, Tim, and because interestingly, we were looking for other copper assets, being a copper operator from Kunrad, was the business fundamentals of the mine. It was low operating costs, it was low capex, and it had got a good, strong track record of production consistently over the previous 10, 15 years. So I think that those were the main factors that attracted us to buying this mine, because we'd obviously enjoying low cost production at Kunrad as well, and it seemed to fit into our business model. It was in an attractive jurisdiction politically, much as I have to say, at the time we didn't know a lot about North Macedonia other than from our due diligence, and you find out a lot more when you actually get into the country to operate there. But those are the key factors that I think determined that we should pay the money we paid, which was $402.5 million 5 years ago to acquire the mine in North Macedonia.
Now, today, Sasa is one of the biggest and most successful mining operations in North Macedonia. Yeah. What changes have you made while it's been in your ownership over the last 5 years?
Well, that's a good question, actually. I mean, we have owned it for 5 years, and we'll touch on the cut and fill project. But up until that point, as we did a review of the operation, I mean, we inherited, or we bought, should I say, something that was running pretty well anyway at the time, and we bought it from previous owners who had gone through a couple of ownership structures effectively prior to us owning it. So we didn't make major changes. It was all with, I would say, fairly manageable levels of capital investment into the business. Things like we changed on a kind of organized basis the fleet of vehicles, the mobile fleet, the loaders, the jumbos and the trucks that we operate. We changed those, and we've now come to a situation we've got an average age of about 5 years, whereas previously they were quite significantly older than that. So we've invested in new mobile equipment. We've invested in a new canteen for the staff, new buses and everything to transport them from the town down the valley up into the mine site. So fairly small beer investments at the moment until we completed our life of mine review, which led to the transition to cut and fill mining, which we can talk about as well in a minute, I guess.
Well, you've raised it, so let's move straight on to it. You're in the middle of a very big investment project, the cut and fill project. Talk us through what that will do. I mean, what's going to be the impact on Sasa and operations and production? And I mean, will there be any impact on the local community once it's complete?
Well, I think the first thing to say about it, to be honest with you, Tim, is that the local community in a town called Kamenica, Makedonska Kamenica, a town of about 6,000 people, is heavily dependent on the mine, and the mine itself is about 4 or 5 kilometers up the valley, and so yes, the community is very dependent. So the key thing of cut and fill and the life of mine review that we did was that the mine itself and the facilities are quite constrained in a fairly narrow valley, and therefore managing the waste is quite an important issue, as it is at any mine. But when you've got constrained footprint effectively, if you can't manage that through a traditional tailings dam and going further down the stream, you may well shorten the life of the mine, because if you can't manage your waste, you can't actually operate the mine. So one of the conclusions we came to fairly rapidly in our life of mine review was that the facility we inherited when we bought the mine, which was for what we call TSF4, would have had a limited capacity, and we'd have had to build a couple more of those going down the valley, and there are dwellings, and that was going to be difficult. So with cut and fill, what it enables you to do is manage your waste in a far more environmentally friendly way by putting it back into the voids that you've created through the mining process, and also to use dry stack tailings. And I think those are the key features of our move over to cut and fill. And how does that benefit the community? Well, it means the life of mine will be effectively extended out for, it's probably 15 years. Whereas in traditional mining, sub-level caving that we currently do, should I say, and the use of TSF4, we'd have had to find some waste facilities to put the waste in, and that would have been quite challenging and therefore could have restricted the life of the mine, of which the community is totally dependent on. There are other aspects in terms of safety. It is a more safe method of mining than sub-level caving. As we go lower in the mine, we're finding geotechnical stresses are increasing, and so cut and fill mining will alleviate some of those problems. So a number of aspects purely from the environmental and safety and community aspects were key to that decision, as well as commercial aspects of getting more metal effectively from the ore that you mine, because it is a more accurate method of mining that ore body, and therefore you get higher recovery and lower dilution.
You made the point there, Nigel, about the significance that Camel has to the local community as the major employer around the town. So tell us, if you will, please, about some of the investments, some of the commitments that you've been making with the local community.
Yeah, well, as we've found at Coonrad, we've set up a local foundation. It's like a charitable foundation. We commit every year to putting a percentage of our revenue back to those charitable foundations, both at Coonrad and at Sasa. That's currently at 0.25% of the revenue, and obviously that moves with metal prices, Tim, as you can imagine. And we're increasing that as a commitment to move that up to 0.5% of our net revenue. And we're looking in future probably around about $1 million per annum being spent at the two operations. So about half and half, $500,000 at Sasa and $500,000 at Coonrad. So significant investments. One of the things we're currently working on with the local mayor and the local community is a development plan for the area, such that when the mine does eventually close down, there hopefully are some employment opportunities for the local community, because, as I said before, it is very dependent on the mine, and we're conscious of our responsibilities as the mining company there to make sure that once the mine does close, that there are development plans for the area. And so we're investing with the local mayor on those kind of opportunities. An example in terms of a specific investment at the moment, we're looking at improving the medical centre, and that's around about $140,000 of investment going into that local medical centre in the local town and for the local community. But there are, some smaller projects, some larger projects, but what we aim to do as a business is try and make anything we invest in the local community on a sustainable footing and look to the future, such that we're actually adding value for the community from the money that we spend.
Let me just take you back to the operational aspects of Sasa. And I know you used the word there. You mentioned sustainability. I know it's very important to you and your colleagues in the company. What sustainability targets have you put in place for the next few years?
Yeah, it's a big focus in business, in mining, as all businesses, and particularly in mining at the moment. And probably three key areas, Tim, to focus on there. One, we've made a commitment that we will reduce our greenhouse gas emissions by 50% by 2030 from a 2020 base. We're well on with that in terms of committing to a solar farm at Coonrad, and also we have 100% renewable energy in Sasa in North Macedonia. So that's one of our key targets. There's other aspects of looking at electric fleet for the mobile equipment and other gains that we can make to achieve that 50% target. In terms of water abstraction from the local rivers and everything, again, that is another key environmental issue across the world, really. And we're looking at a 75% reduction from a 2020 base, such that by 2026, we'll reduce the amount that we abstract from the local rivers and local water sources, effectively, to use in the mine by recycling, and also by the cut and fill process, where you use this dry stack tailing method and squeeze more of the moisture and put it back through the plant on a recycling basis. So that's another target. And I guess the other one, which is a key one, which is another environmental target, is tailings, to improve our management of waste from the mining process itself, and by putting 70% of that waste back underground or in a dry stack tailings manner. So that will be an improved, more environmentally friendly method of managing our waste.
Well, Nigel, I would have finished the interview with a two-part question. The first part, I hope, is easier. The second part might test you a little bit. So if you look back over the last 5 years that you've been operating Sasa, what's been the greatest success? And then here's the tricky one. How good is your crystal ball going to be? Looking forward over the next 5 years, what do you see as being potentially the greatest success in the next 5 years?
Yeah, listen, I think for the investment we've made, the mine has performed well and returned on the basis of which we planned for it economically. So that's been a success. But probably more so, what I'm probably most proud of over the last 5 years that we've owned the mine is the fact that I do believe we've integrated our ownership into the structure of this, the community and the workforce. There was a degree of skepticism from previous owners of the mine. It had been flipped over a number of times in a short period of time before we owned it, and I think people thought we were maybe buying it to do exactly the same. And we were at pains at the time we bought it to say we are long-term investors in the country here and in mining generally, and we've been true to our word, and we'll continue to do that in the country. And I think that's been a big success, really. I think we have been accepted both by national and local government, and also by the workforce, most importantly, that we are there to help them and to invest in that mine and in the local economy. And I think looking forward, harder to answer, but clearly we need to make a success of the cut and fill project. We need to deliver that. It's quite a challenge in terms of changing the mining method, changing the way they've done the mining in the mine for many, many years now is a change management, which is difficult in any business. So that's a challenge. And if we can do that successfully, I think I'll be particularly proud of that. And I guess the last thing really, both historically and looking forward, is the investment we've put into the training of the people, developing the workforce there to bring them into a modern method of mining. Not that anything they did in the past was wrong, but to go to these new techniques of mining and therefore enhance the life of the mine is something which is particularly satisfying from my point of view.
Well, Nigel, thanks for joining us today. Congratulations on the last 5 years at Sasa. Here's
Thanks.
to many, many, many more years of success. And we look forward to seeing you back on Blythe Area Business News in the future. That was Nigel Robinson, Chief Executive of Central Asia Metals, CAML, giving us a very comprehensive update of 5 years of ownership by CAML of the Sasa lead zinc mine in North Macedonia. That's it from Blythe Area Business News for this edition. Thanks for watching.